Hi, ladies. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today, but I still wanted to go over this article on China with you. I'm sure whoever this fantastic sub over here is, am I pointing the right way? This is confusing. Anyway, I'm sure whoever your fantastic sub is can pause this or rewind or fast forward or whatever it is you need to do as we go through this. But I wanted to make sure we got a chance to go over this together. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and take myself off of this screen because this is just getting creepy. Okay, you guys read this article, Boy Troubles. Will too many males spell disaster for China? And this article, of course, was about China's one-child policy that's been so much talked about, and the fact that they only allow couples to have one child. And in fact, if you have more than one child, you have to pay a huge fine. It's something like half of your total income that you make for the entire year, which most people can't afford to do. So let's jump into the questions that you guys answered about this article and look things over here. So what is the ratio of boys to girls in China today, and what's so significant about it? Well, for every 100 girls that are born in China, there's more like 117 to 122 boys. So the numbers aren't even. Naturally occurring, it ends up almost 50-50. But if you multiply this out over millions and millions of people, you're talking with a pretty big difference between boys and girls. Like it says at the bottom of your screen there, it's significant because there are currently, with children under the age of 15, I say currently, this article was written in 2004, but the numbers continue to bear out. At that time, there were 19 million more boys than girls. In 2020, there will be how many more men than women in China? As these children progress into adulthood, this is probably going to become a little bit bigger of a problem. By 2010, they projected, and this is borne out, that there would be about 40 million more men than women. Or to think of it another way, 40 to 60 million missing women, so to speak. And the problem is, our society's, or Chinese society as well, is based around the idea of family and marriage. And who are all of these extra men, so to speak, going to marry? That's going to be a big problem as people try to pair off. Men are going to have difficulty finding wives, so to speak. And that's really going to potentially mess with the family dynamic in China moving forward. In 1994, the Chinese government passed a law. And what they did was they banned the use of ultrasounds for people to find out the sex of their baby. Now, that's very common in our country. Most couples do that now. They'll use the ultrasound in order to find out if they're having a boy or a girl ahead of time. And we've all seen things like people even having like gender reveal parties. Maybe you've heard of the ones where people cut into the cake and they take it to the baker, and the baker bakes the cake either pink or blue on the inside. And people have a lot of fun with that in our culture. But in Chinese culture, it wasn't just a fun way to find out ahead of time what sex your baby was going to be. In that particular culture, it was more a situation of them wanting to know if they were going to have a boy or a girl. Because, quite frankly, couples prefer to have boys for a number of reasons. They believe boys are going to make more money and they're going to be able to take care of their parents when they're older. And in reality, in that culture, once a girl marries off, she's a member of her husband's family, not her original family anyway. So boys, rightly or wrongly, are more valued in that culture. And the problem was that couples had started to abort their babies when they found out that they were girls. The numbers of abortions for girls was skyrocketing, and the government needed to find some kind of way to be able to slow that down. So in 1994, they passed a law that you could no longer find out the sex of your baby through an ultrasound to cut down on the number of abortions that were taking place. So this actually kind of leads us to another problem. How many girls are living in Chinese orphanages today? Because the fact of the matter is, although abortions are still happening, that sort of goes on, under the table, so to speak. But even the couples who do not abort their babies often will abandon them or put them up for adoption. That's why there are many, many Chinese girls up for adoption. Chinese boys, hard to come by in the adoption world, but a lot of Chinese girls available for adoption. And there are 160,000 girls in Chinese orphanages today. It's a pretty staggering number when you really think about it. 160,000 girls in Chinese orphanages because they are either abandoned or simply put up for adoption by couples who simply want to try again to try to get a boy for their one child. Take a second, or maybe in some cases even a third try at it. So that leaves the Chinese men. Obviously, we're dealing with a shortage of women coming up through the new rising Chinese age groups right now. So how are men dealing with that? Well, they're doing all sorts of things. Running newspaper ads to find mates, and I'm sure as we get into the 21st century here further, they're using probably a lot of online dating methods as well. But the point is going to a lot of desperate measures to attract a mate, because quite frankly, women sort of have the pick of the litter, so to speak. There are many, many more women than there are men, and that allows women to be selective and men to kind of feel competitive. They need to find a wife at some point in their lives. The other problem with that is that it leads to a certain amount of crime. Women and children are often kidnapped and sold as wives, so it's led to an increase in those types of behaviors as well, with men desperate to find women. And again, that's sort of the root cause of the increase in crime in China. Women and children are often kidnapped, and they are sold as wives. So you can kidnap a woman or a girl who obviously will grow up to be a woman and sell them as wives. And boys can be kidnapped as well because couples are so desperate to have boys. The ones who can't have children will go to desperate measures to get those as well. So the boys can be sold off in that way as well. So there are a number of problems associated with this gap between the number of men and the number of women in China. As you can imagine, the Chinese government does see this as a problem, the fact that there's going to be so many more men than women. So they're looking for ways to encourage couples to have more girls. And we wanted to sort of talk about if that's going to work or not. They're offering incentives. You can get better housing if you're willing to raise a girl as your child. Or you can get lower school fees, pensions for elderly parents who don't have boys. So monetary incentives. So, originally the reason that a lot of couples wanted to have boys was because there was a financial, money-related advantage to doing so. So the government's kind of trying to counterbalance that by offering good housing and money incentives to couples that are willing to raise girls to sort of even out the balance. In fact, they went so far as to name 2004 the Year of the Girl, which sounds kind of odd because it reminds me of the Chinese calendar and the way they use different animals for different years. But in this case, obviously not an animal. We're talking about the Year of the Girl is what they named it. And they initiate this publicity campaign to encourage more people to have girls. So it's almost like an advertising campaign for girls, literally. So a pretty amazing step that they've had to take to go and try to encourage people to have more girls. Finally, we meet a particular young man near the end of that article, Feng Zhengliang, and he's not worried about finding a wife. Even amid all of this trouble and the numbers not being in his favor, he's not worried. He says, am I worried I won't find a wife? No, because the world is so big. And I think what he probably means by that is that things are more international than they've ever been. People used to sort of be confined to their country. That was your world. But options are bigger now than they ever have been before. And he could go even international, and the world is more connected than it's ever been. So that's a little bit about China's problem there in terms of having more men than women. We can talk about this a little bit more when I get back on Tuesday. But for now, I just wanted you guys to make sure you were on the right track on this article. And that's really all I have for you guys. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday. I hope this was helpful. And on Tuesday, hopefully we'll be able to go over your tests. I have not graded them yet. I'm recording this on Wednesday night. I haven't graded them yet at this time, but I did run the Scantrons before I left school today, and they were looking really good. So I'm excited to see how you guys did on this, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on Tuesday. Miss seeing you today, but I will catch you next week. You guys have a great weekend, and I will see you later.